Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and today I would like to start a two-part series of interviews with a bodybuilder from the Silver Era that met and trained with Reg Park, and even competed alongside Bill Pearl and Sir Sean Connery during the 1953 Mr. Universe. At the time of this interview, Ed was 87 or 88 years old, and would soon suffer from prostate cancer but survive. Ed is a true example of longevity in the sport of bodybuilding. And in this interview, I will showcase Ed's physique as he looked like in his 70s to show what is possible to achieve if you stay natural. Understand, just look at this amazing photo and understand that this is possible through decades worth of training. And what we see is this glowing specimen of a human being with a body that most people in their 20s would be proud of, even teens. So without further ado, here is Ed's story. Hey, hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here, and today we have Edmund Abrook. It's a
You
great
can call me
pleasure.
Ed.
Ed, excellent. Who was a friend of, or actually met Reg Park, a friend of Reg Park.
Well, I met him, probably met him 4 or 5 times over my lifetime.
Okay, that's great.
All in the 50s, 60s, and the 70s. Yeah.
During his prime, basically.
Yeah, absolutely, his prime.
Yeah, and you're in the UK, right?
I'm in Canada right now. I live in Canada. I've lived in Canada for 65 years.
Okay, but you met Reg when you were in the UK.
I met Reg when I was very young, when I was just starting out bodybuilding.
Excellent.
There was a bunch of us, we were all born in Portsmouth. There were about 6 guys and 4 or 5 girls. I mean, we lived on the beach. You know where Portsmouth is in England?
Not quite. I don't know my geography of the UK very well.
It's right on the south coast, and so the English Channel comes right up to your knees,
Okay.
And so, we spent every weekend at the beach, every evening at the beach. We were all very good swimmers. A couple of guys had kind of, started out pseudo bodybuilding, and we were all in good shape because we were all very fit. I was on Portsmouth's books at the time, playing for Portsmouth Reserve, so I was very fit, and we realized that if you want to, I'm quoting Arnold here, if you want to meet girls, you got to have a good physique.
Fair enough. So for people out there, I guess not only were you acquainted and probably very well acquainted with Reg Park, probably a friend of Reg Park, but I guess the reason why I really wanted to speak to you today was because you're a fantastic example of longevity. And I just want to initially share some of these photos right now with some of the audience out there, especially, I mean, I've shown my clients this particular photo of you, just taken a few years back, I admit, when you were 70 years old.
Yeah.
And this is the whole point of today's topic, I think. For a lot of natural bodybuilders out there, we're looking here at a 70-year-old man, a 70-year-old physique that has been doing this for a very, very long time. And this is the result of hard work, dedication, consistency, and living the true life of bodybuilding, not one that is dependent on steroids, one that actually gives you long life and health and longevity and a strong body for the rest of your life, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I really do believe that weight training, or bodybuilding, weight training, probably saved my life on more than one occasion, and also helped me to recover from serious injuries on more than one occasion.
That's fantastic. So going back to your images now, I think we'll open this one where you're 16 years of age, right?
I was probably 16 or 17 here. And yes. that was taken on Hayling Island, which is right next to Portsmouth.
Okay. Here you're very young, and apparently you said that at this age, you were basically doing a lot of swimming, a lot of outdoor sports. Is that right?
Playing football as well, yeah.
Yeah. And you met Reg Park.
Yeah, I met him in. I didn't actually get a chance to talk to him. Somebody introduced me to him, and he said hi, and I shook his hand, and that was in London in 1949.
And that was when, as you said earlier, Reg Park had just won the Mr. Britain contest. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. And then the following year, I met him again because in 1950 he was runner-up to Steve Reeves in the Mr. Universe contest.
Correct.
So I had an opportunity to shake Steve Reeves' hand too. I very much liked Steve Reeves' physique, not more than Reg, totally different physiques, but obviously the feeling looking at Steve was he was more Grecian, Roman Grecian gladiator type,
Could you just get back a bit there? You're getting too close to the camera again.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
And so I met Steve, and it's quite controversial actually. In being in the audience, Reg, you'd think Reg would have won it because he was way more muscular. But Steve had a fantastic spread. He was probably the best looking bodybuilder ever, facially.
Mm-hmm.
And he had also, he won the Mr. America in 1947.
Yes.
So he'd been training a while. I mean, I'd like to emphasize, if I may, at this particular point, there were no steroids around at this particular time. They were available because I know Arnold was taking them at 15, but they weren't readily available.
Let me interrupt you there for a second. Arnold, when he was 15, he was already, it was 1962. Now, we're talking about Steve Reeves and Reg Park in the late 40s and early 50s.
Yeah.
That's already a large gap in time. So, if anything, from what history tells us, the only thing that was available was testosterone. That's it.
Well, actually, no. I'll just give you a quick little story. At the end of World War II, the concentration camp survivors couldn't keep whole food down. It was basically killing them.
Mm-hmm.
And so a company which is still in existence, although they've changed the name, it used to be Glaxo Industries, now it's GlaxoSmithKline.
Yes.
They took on the chore of developing a 100% protein powder.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, as my understanding, it was the first, pure protein powder available. Now, it was developed exclusively and specifically for the concentration camp survivors. However, bodybuilders being bodybuilders, I guess they saw here's an opportunity to enhance their protein intake.
Mm-hmm.
It was 98% pure protein, and that's the only thing that was available. I mean, Reg at this point had already won his Mr. Universe, and so Reg and Steve and these guys. I mean, it was basically raw eggs in a blender with whole milk.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm only discussing the point of steroids. Of course, supplements were already available in the 50s. I mean, I think the World War had a lot to do with advancing science overall,
Yes,
including nutrition. But regarding steroids, of course, the first real available steroids were only in the mid 50s. But anyway, getting back to yourself. Okay, so what made you?
Carlos, before you ask me that question,
sorry,
are you going to ask me if I ever took steroids?
Well, I was going to get to that later.
Oh, okay, fine.
I'm assuming you never did.
No, I never did. No.
Firstly, I wanted to start off by asking you, what was it that got you? You said that it was just wanting to get girls.
Well, no, actually, obviously there's more to it than that. I lived outdoors. I was conscious of my physique. I was almost 6'1". I was very, very fit. I looked fit. And so jumping forward a little bit, I had just returned. When I was 15, I went to the US for a year, went to high school there. I had an uncle living there. And while I was in the US, I played football there. I was on the track team and on the swimming team in the high school. But while I was there, I saw a magazine, Your Physique or Muscle Power, one of those two magazines, with Marvin Eder on the cover.
Oh, yeah.
So he was only 16 or 17 at the time, but they were pushing Marvin Eder because he was the youngest guy with 18-inch arms.
Yes.
And so that kind of stuck in my memory too. Now, that's before I even met Reg.
Okay.
I was only there a year and a half, and then I came back to the UK.
So you started bodybuilding because also you saw images of Marvin Eder. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I saw images of. I mean, in the Your Physique and Muscle Power, we had several of our guys who got jobs on the ocean liners going from Southampton to New York, and they'd bring back these magazines,
Nice.
And so we were dead keen, just and we must have had 5 or 6 guys who were in our group and they bring back American clothes and jeans and things. We'd never seen any of that stuff. So we were cool dudes. But the thing is, that was what, I don't know if you're familiar. It's what was called the Teddy Boys era. The Teddy Boys era. Teddy Boys are young guys who dressed in somewhat Edwardian clothes. And they were a gang, really, and they would go around, and upset people and do crazy things like young guys did. I mean, they weren't violent necessarily, but bodybuilders in those days were considered gay.
Yes.
I mean, in Britain they called them queer.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, so we took a lot of stick from the Teddy Boys. They'd always be ganging up on us, and there were a lot of punch-ups.
Okay.
because we were, I mean, we were like a bee to honey on the beach with girls, whereas previously the Teddy Boys, because of the way they dressed, were attracting all the females. Now along come these guys with better physiques and more open, and so we kind of I guess pushing ourselves in on their turf.
Fair enough.
Carlos, the picture that you're showing me now.
Yes.
That was taken in 1956.
Okay, so that you were about 23 there. Is that correct?
23. That was taken the year I arrived in Canada.
Okay.
That's the heaviest I ever got to. I was about 196 there.
Mm-hmm.
And in 53, I entered the Mr. Universe contest.
Okay.
Sean Connery. That's how I met Sean Connery.
Wow,
I mean, you can tell I had a better physique than Sean, and I told him so.
And you would have met Bill Pearl too then.
Bill Pearl, actually, yeah, that was the first time he came to the UK, and he was fantastic.
23. Now, I've got some photos of you at 23. So this is the physique you would have presented, or I've even got a better one actually of you. This one, I believe.
That's the one that was in the Reg Bank Journal.
Yeah. So 1953, you entered the Mr. Universe against Sean Connery and Bill Pearl. Can you talk about that?
I can. It's an odd story. I was playing football for Portsmouth at the time, and of course those days there were no substitutes. they only dressed 11 players and one spare, and so the chances of even getting a match in the first team were pretty rare unless somebody got injured.
Yeah.
So I took a chance and went up to London with another friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sean Connery was a nobody then. Nobody had heard of him, you know. He had made a movie in Scotland, I think, one movie. But anyway, I talked to the organisers and I told them, you know, I'd like to enter, but I had to get back to Portsmouth to play a match.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I doubt whether I could be in the final lineup.
Yeah.
So I said, well, you know, let's see how it goes. I mean, I looked at the lineup and I think there was something like 35 or 40 participants. No, and of course, Bill Pearl stood out, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, he should have been in a class all his own, which he was.
Yeah.
But anyway, at the same time, and you've probably heard this story, and maybe this is the wrong time to be telling it, and if it is, tell me. At the same time as the Mr. Universe was being held, Mae West, have you ever heard of Mae West?
Yes.
Mae West was running a South Pacific show in London at the same time.
Okay.
And she wanted some bodybuilders, you know, guys in their shorts to pose in the chorus, you know, in the show. And I talked to Sean about it, and I said, Sean said, Ed, we should go. It was only 3 or 4 blocks away. We could walk.
Right.
He said, we should go and try out for this. He said, it could be fun.
Yep.
So I said, I'm sure it is. I said, but I got to be back to Portsmouth, you know, for my match tomorrow. I said, why don't you go down and see how it goes, and you can tell me when I see you again. Yeah. So anyway, he went down. Long story short, they signed him on.
Of course.
It was his accent. They signed him on. He stayed with the show and toured with the show in London, around Britain for a little while. Mm-hmm. Went back to Edinburgh, auctioned for James Bond, and the next thing I know, he's got my part.
Exactly. So, talk about good timing, and yeah, I mean, in your
for him. I mean, you've got there's a picture in your group there where I'm standing. It's not a casual picture. It's a posed picture.
Mm-hmm. There's a picture that you've sent me.
Yeah, it's a picture of me, and that was exactly there on the time there. That picture there. That picture was, you know, if you stand me, if you can pull up Sean Connery, if you type in Miss Universe 53, I think it was, and
yeah, they're right here.
And if you look at me there and look at Sean, I mean, there's no comparison.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't get to. I attended the prejudging. They didn't tell you how I'd done. I didn't know how I'd done. The rumor has it that Sean came third in our class in the prejudging. He never verified that because there was a lot of controversy about it. You know,
I've got the results actually in the Health and Strength magazine from 1953. I'd have to look, but your results will probably be in there. I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, my picture won't be.
Oh yeah, maybe. I'll see if I can find them.
I don't think, but I mean, if you stand me next to Sean.
Yeah, I've seen the photos of Sean. Sean is really thin there in comparison.
Yeah, he's very lean.
Yeah, he's lean. He's muscular, but he doesn't have the muscular bulk.
I don't think he's been working out very long.
Yeah,
but a nice guy.
Of course. Going back to these to the photos where you are most massive there. Not that it's massive by any means to today, but quite muscular for back then.
Yeah.
What happened after you went to Mr. Universe? Did you decide to just stop competing, or did you continue to compete? What happened?
Well, that was 53. I didn't compete anymore.
Okay.
I had competed earlier. You've probably seen the name in Arnold's books, Wag Bennett.
Yes, of course.
Well, Wag was a personal friend, and Diane.
Hmm.
Diane, maybe you have these questions, but I don't mean to get you off your track, you
Not
know.
at all.
But Wag was a big influencer on,
Yes, of course.
and also a very good close friend of Regis.
Yes, exactly. I'm
And
aware of that. I wasn't going to ask about that because mainly I didn't know if you knew him.
no, actually I knew Wag well,
Okay.
and saw him quite a bit later, closer to his death too. You know, I mean,
Okay.
I used to go over to England. I went over to England about 40 times in a row, 40 years in a row. Always back to Fratton Park, which is Portsmouth ground, and I'd work with the youth team and I'd help train the first team. And at that point, Bob Woolger's gym was still operating in Portsmouth.
Hmm.
Now, Bob Woolger's gym was owned by Bob Woolger. Wag Bennett was the guy that was running it, and Diane was running her girls out of there too. Reg would come down and train at Bob's gym. I mean, I've spotted for Reg a few times.
Nice.
I mean, not easy, I can tell you, because in those
I
days
can imagine.
he was bench pressing, you know, like 400 in sets, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, he'd often come down and spend a couple of days because Bob Woolger was a very good friend of his, and Wag also. There was a bit of a contest at the time. Who was going to be the first guy to bench press 500 pounds?
Mm.
Wag or Reg? As it happened, Reg did it, but
Yes,
then
of course.
Reg wasn't the first because the first guy was the guy in Montreal.
Yeah, Doug Hepburn. Doug
So
Hepburn.
yeah, good for you. Yeah, Doug Hepburn. Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
mean, Doug
and
Hepburn was the first. Reg Park was the second, but he was the first official bodybuilder.
yes,
And then Marvin Eder was the first under 20-year-old
that amazes me.
and under 200-pounder to ever bench press over 500 pounds.
Really.
Yeah.
And you know how hard that is on your tendons and your joints? I
I
mean,
can only imagine.
even spotting him. I mean, you needed
Yeah.
two guys each hand to spot him. You know? So
Okay, I got some questions now.
go ahead. Go
Thank
ahead.
you for the story of a condensed story, basically of your life in bodybuilding and competing, the people you've met over the years. By the way, did you ever meet Arnold or not?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me about that before I go on to my questions?
Okay. I met Arnold first in 19. I think it was 66 when he first came over.
Mm-hmm.
Wag had moved his gym to London.
Mm-hmm.
Arnold showed up at his gym. He wanted to meet Reg. He'd seen a picture of Reg, I believe. I have 3 books on Arnold, and every one of them tells a different story.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, if you listen to Arnold, he'll tell a different story too. You know, his favorite word was fantastic. And so the story is always fantastic. But the Wag called me and said, "You got to get that.
That's the photo, right?
I have an idea that I'm in that photo just up the ways. That's the first time he met Reg. First time Arnold met Reg. And I mean, we talked about it afterwards, Wag and
Just
Reg and
looking
I,
for that
and
photo now.
we knew right away. I mean, this guy was headed for the stars, but he was already on steroids. You know, you couldn't be that
Yeah,
big at 19.
there we go. So that's the photo we're talking
Yeah,
about right
right.
now.
Yeah, and that I made. They took lots of pictures. He stayed a couple of days, and then they let him live in the basement for 3 months because and Diane had 6 kids at that point, you know. But anyway, it was hard to have a dialogue with him because he didn't have any English at
Okay.
all. But Reg and Arnold hit it off because you know you could see Arnold was starstruck with
Oh,
Reg.
yeah?
Oh, absolutely starstruck. I mean, he thought Reg was the greatest thing since sliced bread. Reg was. You have to understand that Reg at that time was so far ahead of everybody else. He was actually comparable to where Arnold got when he dominated.
Yeah. I would agree.
Everybody looked up to Reg.
Yeah.
Everybody looked up to him, and he was such a nice guy too. But you can see there, in that picture, Arnold is in awe.
Yeah, he's just like, can't believe that
I'm here. Yeah.
he's next to his
I'm meeting
hero.
him. Yeah. Oh, no, anyway, I went up and Wag introduced me to Arnold and said, Ed works out in Portsmouth, where we go down sometimes.
Okay.
And I had, like maybe a 3-minute chat with him. That's all.
Cool.
But I also met him again in the 70s. Bob Walker was quite ill at the time. Diane was running a gym. Actually, sorry, Diane and Wag were married at this time. They got married in, I think, 64, something like that. Diane had taken over her dad's gym, Bob Walker's gym, and she was kind of in financial difficulties. Arnold. I was in Portsmouth at the time. I was at Stratton Park, and I always would go over and see Diane, but he was spending more time. Arnold was spending more time in London, but he'd always drop down and see Bob, especially as Bob was sick, and Diane, who he worshipped too. I don't know if you know, but Diane became probably the premier bodybuilding judge in the world.
She was
the number one bodybuilding judge in the world. And Wag was a judge too, of course.
Yes.
But Arnold was over there. Diane told me this several years later. Arnold had come over and given her a very large sum of money to keep the gym going.
Okay.
Just gave her a gift.
That's very kind of him.
He was that generous to a fault to people he liked or people who helped him.
Yeah. Well, that's Arnold.
Yeah, that's right. Oh no, yeah. Probably the most focused guy you'll ever. His whole life was planned out by the time he was 19.
Fantastic.
I admire Arnold for what he attained. I don't admire him for the steroid use, obviously, and it really annoyed me when George Bush made him the not the minister of sport, but the ambassador of sport.
Yeah, I know.
I thought, give me a break, I don't know whether you've ever seen this. This is the part of the eulogy of that Arnold gave to Reg when he died.
Oh wow!
Do you have that?
No, I don't actually.
In that he talks about what heroes are, and he says Reg was my hero.
Yeah, that's Arnold always.
Yeah,
commemorating Reg.
Yeah,
getting him started.
Although in one of his books he doesn't even mention him.
Well, Ed, the Zoom call will probably finish in 5 minutes.
Oh no!
Yeah, we're gonna have to do another one.
A couple of hours.
No, I'll call you back. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop it before it stops itself.
Okay, I don't. Yeah, do I have to do anything?
No, you just hang around.
Okay.
It'll take 5 minutes because I recorded it, and this one will process 5 minutes, and then I'll call you back in 5 minutes because now I want to talk about.
How will I know how you called me back? Just by sitting here, and it'll come up on the screen.
Yeah, it'll just come up. And what I'll do is we'll go for another round because now I want to ask you in the second round about your training methods, your nutrition, and your secret to longevity. Okay, so we'll talk in a few minutes. Okay?
I did spend 2 years in the military too.
Okay, well we can talk all about that in 5 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm enjoying this, Carlos.
Me too.
well worth waiting for. I hope you're not disappointed.
No, it's all good. We'll talk again in 5 minutes.
All right, great. Cheers.
Bye. So that's the first part of this interview with Ed Abbrook, and unfortunately, Ed and I could never reconnect at the end of this Zoom meeting, and instead connected a year later. But what great stories from Ed explaining how bodybuilding was in the Silver Era, training with legends like Reg Park. As mentioned before, at the time of this interview, Ed was 87 or 88 years old, I'm not sure. But looking at his physique in his 70s, again, just amazing. What an example of longevity in the sport of bodybuilding. And this physique and the health, vitality and strength he achieved has served him. As Ed put it, it saved his life more than once. And he'll be talking about that in the next interview. But just reflecting on this photo and his others, of course, he doesn't just have an amazing physique, but he's got this amazing tan with glowing skin. A true picture of vitality and strength at 70 years of age or more, drug-free. Looking at Ed's bodybuilding career, he started bodybuilding after seeing Marvin Eder on the cover of Your Physique, no surprise at all. And looking at his progression from 16 years of age, Ed had been playing sports and he had already developed a very athletic physique. And then he met Reg Park in 1949 after Reg Park won the Mr. Britain contest. And a year later, he met both Steve Reeves and Reg Park after the Mr. Universe contest. But Ed did not decide to become a full-blown bodybuilder and instead used bodybuilding to complement his life and his athletic endeavors. As you heard along the way though, Ed met other celebrities like Sean Connery and Bill Pearl at the 1953 NABBA Mr. Universe finals, and later Arnold Schwarzenegger when he first met Reg Park, as well as other sports stars. Now, although our conversation was cut short, I did manage to interview Ed a second time in which he explains his training philosophy and diet that kept him strong and vital for most of his life. And this will be the subject of the next video interview with Ed Abbrook, so I'm absolutely sure that most of you definitely want to know what his secrets are for longevity in bodybuilding. Now, if you are interested in living a long, strong, healthy life, full of vitality, strength, and health, and wish to bodybuild naturally for the rest of your life, building the best version of yourself, I highly encourage you to get in touch with me, as I have helped dozens of clients from young teens to men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, and women reach a level of strength and health that they had lost since their youths, and in their own words, they feel as good as new. My contact details are given below in this video description. So I do hope you've enjoyed this video with Ed Abbrook. If you have, please give the video a like, subscribe, and leave me your comments. What do you think of Ed Abbrook and his longevity in the sport of bodybuilding? What about bodybuilding naturally to live a long and strong life? Please share your stories and comments. And that's it from me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm saying bye for now. Head to www.goldenerabookworm.com for the biggest range of classic old school bodybuilding books as ebooks, e-magazines such as Iron Man and Reg Park Journal, high quality bodybuilding posters of the Golden Era stars, merchandise and classic gymwear featuring Steve Reeves, Marvin Eder, John Grimmick, Reg Park, and many other Golden Era stars. For those wishing to build a classic physique, lose fat and build muscle, online training is also available. Collectibles such as rare autographed photos from the Golden Era stars are also available, and to collaborate, please get in touch. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Vince Gironda's approach to bodybuilding, his principles, and all these tips of wisdom that he has, I mean, there's so much stuff that probably hasn't been proven by science, and it will take science to prove or disprove Vince. But to be honest, these 3 books, I believe, which I call the Classic Physique Bundle, are the best books that Vince ever came out with. And they, of course, are the Wild Physique, the Master Series, and the Pro Series. Have a look at it this way. The Wild Physique, I believe, is like the ABCs of Vince Gironda's Principles to Bodybuilding. He teaches you the exercises and his principles. But how do you put them together? Well, the Master Series is a 14-month program of using all of these principles, all of the diets that Vince came out with, all of the exercises. And of course, the Pro Series was a book that he came out with later on, specially targeted for getting into competition. It's just these three books, as I call it, the classic physique bundle, are Vince's best work, and available, of course, at www.goldenerabookworm.com.